So today's video is going to be a little bit different because what we're going to do is look at some of the steps I do before I get to the actual pour. Now most of the other videos you've seen of mine, we go straight into the pour, but this is a little bit different. If you'd like to just go straight to the pour, head to 7 minutes and 20 seconds and that's where you see the pour. So here we've got some fluorescent orange mica. Anytime you use a fluorescent mica, you must use some oil to distribute that colour evenly, otherwise you'll get speckles and spots. The way that I do that is using a palette knife on a glass or acrylic plate, and I use some lightweight oil, and I'm going to distribute that colour into that oil by actually working it with the palette knife. Now quite often what you'll find is if you just blend this, you stick blend it into your oils, you're still going to get some flecks or bits of that colour not dispersing properly. So by doing it this way, you get a far better distribution of the colour, and you also get a far nicer colour at the end of it. So you'll see here I'm actually using the orange and some red to make this kind of really nice kind of bright fiery red, and in my opinion that's a better way of getting a nice red colour, and there are many ways of making a kind of deep red colour, but I kind of like this one to give me a kind of orangey red. So you'll see here now I've got all of my colour mixed. It takes me around about 5, 7, maybe even 10 minutes to get these mixed. And then we're going to scrape that off into a bowl, ready for colouring our batter in the next stage. I'm also going to do that for the fluorescent yellow colourant that we're using here. And I'm also again just going to tone the fluorescent down with a little bit of that orange colour. So we're using the red and the yellow both in the same colour sector of the colour wheel. And I'm also going to do that with my activated charcoal. My activated charcoal is very light. As anyone knows, if you stick blended that in, you get these puffs of smoke. And I find just by using this technique with the activated charcoal, I get a nicer colour. So there we go, that's the Mica Mama fluorescent yellow. Love this colour, it's a really fantastic bright colour in cold process soap. But once again, I'm going to knock this back a little bit with the orange. So rather than dipping a dirty orange spoon into the yellow, I'm just pouring a little bit out. And all of these colourants I'm using, except for the activated charcoal, are from Mica Mama. So our fluorescent yellow mica is down there, and fluorescent yellow is probably one of the hardest, I think, for getting the best colour out of. And once again, I'm just going to add a touch of the orange. So we're bringing all of the colourants into the right kind of colour sphere on the colour wheel. As we mix this here, what you'll see is that yellow actually tones right down to almost like a yolk yellow rather than that really bright, heavy, fluorescent yellow. And I prefer that in this particular soap because I think it sits very nicely with the black of the main body of the soap, but it doesn't lose that kind of yellowness against it. So a little bit of a tip there if you're looking to just tone down those vibrant colours but still keep a nice pop of very nice strong colourant. And activated charcoal here. Now you can use black mica if you want to, that's absolutely fine, and you'll use the black mica in exactly the same way as you do with the other micas. But the activated charcoal, again, I am just using the same principle, getting some oil into it, distributing it through that oil nicely. Now the thing with activated charcoal is it's not a colourant in of itself, although it does make things nice and black. It is more of a suspension of particles. So this is going to absorb a lot more oil, and the thing you'll find is that if you just pop this straight into your batter and you want to be able to control your batter's trace, by just throwing it in there you're going to cause yourself a little bit of an issue. Whereas if you actually distribute it into some oil first, it's starting to absorb that extra oil that you're adding to it and not the oil from your batter. One thing I will say is if you're in the UK, obviously we all know you've got to use the oil out of your batch if you have had that batch tested and you want to sell it. Around the rest of the world, you can add a little bit of any oil that you want to, but within the UK, you must use and account for that oil you're using to kind of bloom your activated charcoal in your recipe. So just bear that in mind. I'm going to add some titanium dioxide to my main mixture here. And I mix my titanium dioxide with distilled water at 1 part titanium dioxide to 3 parts water. What that means is if I need 1 gram of titanium dioxide in a recipe, I need to add 4 grams of my main mixture, knowing that I've got a full gram of titanium dioxide within that kind of 3 grams of water. I know we're working with a black here, but I also want my main colours to pop, which is why I've added the titanium dioxide to the oils. Now what I'm going to do is add our lye solution into this. And the lye solution was made with goat's milk. And look how orange this is. It is really, really orange. Now, I'm not too concerned about that. And what's happened here is basically the lye has heated up with the goat's milk and it's caramelised the sugars within it. But I'm working with oranges, yellows and black. I'm not that worried if my batter is going to go slightly orange, but the titanium dioxide I've added to that is going to help counteract the orangeness of that, and we should be good. Now, looking at the stick blender here, if you look at the bell and the shaft of the stick blender, you'll see just at the top there, we're getting a little bit of separation. So I just want to get this batter to emulsion and not really any further, because I want a little bit of working time with this. So once we've got ourselves to emulsion, I'm going to pour off 2 lots of the batter, 1 for the yellow and 1 for the red. And the remainder of the soap is going to get the black activated charcoal. So look at how nice and fluid we've got this batter going, and that's what I'm really looking for. I'm going to let this set up to a medium sort of trace by itself. I'm not going to try and stick blend it there, because the problem you have is if you over stick blend, you're going to end up with a really thick batter quicker than you want it. So into one of my little pots, I'm going to add my yellow colour. And again, once its orange goes in, which is kind of that yolk yellow, and you stir it in, you'll find that it actually goes into this really nice kind of pale, bright yellow. Why I like making yellows in this way, because then you get a really nice pop of colour with them, and you're not over using micas and drying things out. Again, just making sure that I'm keeping everything stirred, everything going round. So into this one, we're going to add our reddy orange, and this should be a really nice red colour. We'll pop that into the other lot of batter we've pulled off, and we'll get a really nice kind of orangey red colour. Look at that. So we've got some beautiful colours going on here. Now, whilst I'm just stirring these bits and pieces, this technique uses squeeze bottles. And what you have to do with the squeeze bottles for this technique is elongate the nozzle. Now, you do that by using a disposable pipette, and you basically are going to tape that onto the main nozzle to elongate it. You'll also see here I've got a few packs in my squeeze bottles, which are just the big pillow packs that you get in a lot of deliveries these days. And I didn't really enjoy using this technique, and I'd much rather just wash up the bottles afterwards. But a lot of people do swear by it, so I'm showing you that technique here. And we're going to put every single drop that we can get out of this pot into our squeeze bottle. So there are lots of tutorials out there for showing you how to put elongate the nozzles. And there you can see my nozzle is elongated. It's taped on with a little bit of, I've actually just used some cling film. I've got some really stretchy cling film that I've used to kind of tape that one on. But electrical tape is the best thing to tape it on. And then I've cut the top of that nozzle off. So it's around about, I don't know, half a centimetre, which is about 1/4 of an inch, so that I can let enough of the batter out when I'm doing the technique. Now, with this technique, you need to realise that the slower you go through the batter, the bigger the drops are going to be, and the harder you squeeze, the bigger the drops are going to be. The quicker you move through the batter, or the lighter you squeeze, the smaller the drops are going to be. So you need to have a little bit of a practice with this technique in order to find out which drops are going to work for you and how to achieve them with the pressure you apply to the bottle and also the speed that you move through the batter. But we'll mention that again when we get to it. So we're just going to get the batter just to the end of the nozzle, and here we have our main batch. Got plenty there for my drop swirls, and I'm going to then colour this one with the activated charcoal. And I'm always astonished at how beautiful this just kind of mixes in by hand. And again, by pre-dispersing all of your micas and your colorants, you can stir these in by hand and you can control the trace a lot more. And that's why we do it. If you want to have that lovely control of your batter, try and mix as much in by hand as you can get. So all I've done there, poured a little bit of the batter out into the pot to get as much of that black colorant out as I possibly can do. And we're going to get this to medium trace. So I've sped it up a little bit here, and I'm just waiting for this to come up to the right trace for us to work with. So you can see me just testing the top of it there, and it's just sitting on top of the batter quite nicely. So I'm just going to pour in my base colour, and I'm pouring it over the spatula just so we don't introduce too many air bubbles to it. I want a nice solid colour on this base, and then we're going to scrape out as much as we can because we do not need any of this for the top of the soap. We need to put as much of this base colour in as we can possibly get in there. So make sure we're all nicely scraped out. It's not a great shot, I grant you that one, but it is important that we get every last ounce of this soap out of our pot and into the mould. I love activated charcoal soaps. They're nice and cleansing. They're good for all sorts of skin soaps. But for me, it's like, well, why not make an activated charcoal soap look just as interesting as all the other soaps we make, and it's not just black. And I like this technique for doing that. So we're moving on to actually doing our technique finally. And we've only got one shot for this one, which is straight down. Now you need to bear in mind that the depth you put the nozzle in is where your drops are going to happen. So if you want big drops at the bottom and little ones at the top, you need to start with the ones at the bottom of the soap first. And what you're going to do is insert the nozzle to the level within the soap vertically where you want your drop to appear. And then what you're going to do is, starting at one end, you're going to insert the nozzle down to where you want it, squeeze it with an even pressure as you move the nozzle and the bottle along in a horizontal axis towards the other side of the mould. You're then going to stop squeezing and pull out, avoiding putting a lot of that soap back in, and that is a drop swirl. It's happened. Although you can't see it, it's there. So we're going to move on to the yellow one here, and we're just going to repeat this process. And as I say, where your nozzle is within the soap is where you are going to get your drop swirls. I'm just going to get that colour, the end of the nozzle. I'm going to lower it into the level that I want it. I'm going to move it across the soap, keeping it as horizontal as I can keep it. The other end of the mould, I'm not going to allow it to pull some of that soap up, but I'm going to pull out, and then I'm going to... So again, you're just going to repeat this process for as many of the drops as you want. You can do 2 or 3 or 5 or 7. And actually, if you can realise where you've put one drop and you hit that drop with the second colour, you can get some really fantastic colours. I didn't want that in this soap. I just wanted these to look like almost like flames just flickering in a blackness. So that's what I was kind of going for. I wanted to keep these drops very, very separate. So I've done some at a lower level. On the next few, I'm not inserting the nozzle quite so deep, so I'm getting some higher drops moving through the soap. The one thing with the bags is they do tend to stop some of the soap coming through And I found it made the process a little bit more complicated because I couldn't get the last little bits of soap out. But if you don't want as much washing up, this is a great way of saving on washing up. So I've turned the mould around there just because I want to be able to get a different motion going and maybe some different looking drops. And going the other direction, you can kind of make sure that you're just getting a nice even amount of soap in both ways. And unfortunately there I've moved towards the top of the screen, but all I'm doing is using the leftover soap that I've got to make a pattern on the top. And when I first did this, it looked a little bit like mustard and ketchup on top of something. However, I played around with it and we got a nice pattern on top of the soap in the end. So we're just going to finish this off and I will join you for the cut very shortly. And here we are back to the cut. Now you can see how I kind of played around with that top section and I give it a little peek in the middle. It looked far more flamey than it did mustard and ketchupy. So now it's saponified, you can see how those colours are really nice and bright and bold in the soap. And that's what I was really kind of going for. I wanted it to look like flames within it. So really taking that time at the beginning to distribute your colourant into your oils and make sure that you can stir it in and control the trace. That is really important when you've got some of these techniques which are a little bit more complicated, need a little bit more thought, need you to do a little bit kind of more hand stirring than stick blending. So wherever you can, try not to stick blend and stir through the traces so you've got a lot more working time. So let's go into this soap and see what we've got on the inside. Really excited at this point because this is just a fantastic looking soap. Get it lined up. So my little mould here will give me 3 nice bars and 2 ends. Well, the ends are always a little bit off on this technique, so you do need to chop them off and really get 3 good bars out of the middle of the loaf. And again, I try and do this as gently as possible. I don't want to be twang at the end. I don't want to kind of break anything. So I tend to just use a couple of fingers on my soap cutter just to ease it through. If you're having to really force it through, I find that you're probably cutting it too late or you've added too much of a sodium product, so sodium as in salt, or you've got that sodium lactate going on in there. So I try and go through gently. And let's have a look at these soaps here. And there we go. There is the Mini Drop Swirl soap with all of my little swirls going on. You see how just beautiful little drops they make? It's wonderful. So, if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. It really helps me grow and allows me to make more videos and tutorials for all of you guys. When you subscribe, don't forget to click the bell icon to get notified when a new video is uploaded. And in the meantime, thanks a lot, soapsters. We'll see you next time.